I've told you many times before, morally, I could justify coming in here every day and just talking about abortion. It would be a terrible show, an awful show. It would get the worst ratings in the world. Everyone would be sick of it almost immediately. But it would be morally justified because it is such an important issue. Over 65 million children should have been born, should be alive today, but aren't because of this terrible decision made with no legal basis 50 years ago. Over the world, by the way, we're talking about 1 billion people. 1 billion people we've lost to this. It's inhuman. And much of the world is going in the opposite direction and opening up laws. Now, we've talked about this before. America has laws that are much more liberal up until today than most of Europe. I mean, the average country in Europe has more conservative abortion laws than did Utah up until today. And that is all changing now thanks to the Supreme Court. Of course, thanks should go to people like President Trump, who named 3 conservative justices to the Supreme Court who all voted the correct way today. Incredibly important. Mitch McConnell gets a lot of bashing from our audience. He's a Republican, but not always everybody's favorite Republican. He was, held the line with Merrick Garland, though I don't think he would have been approved anyway. I think somewhat, at some level, that gets a little bit overblown, but that's part of it as well. Harry Reid, I like to make fun of him for this, but he's the guy who made it only 50 votes for a Supreme Court justice and probably contributed to this process as well. But all that being said, it's an incredibly important day. It's step one on a long, long journey, I think, to change the way people think about this. People will still be able to get abortions here in this country. People will be getting pills mailed to them from India for the next, many, many years to come, I'm sure. But hopefully in the long term, we can see this for what it is, a real evil, a real failing of our country. A sad, sad chapter that is up there with things like slavery. It really is. In fact, you're talking about tens of millions of people that should be alive that aren't. It's hard to compare that to really anything. You're approaching the global toll of, the global toll of communism is even less than this. Which is, they're in the 9 figures, so it's a pretty high number. Let me give you some of the ruling. I'm not going to spend tons and tons of time of going through the specifics today. We will be on radio next week doing a lot of that, and we'll be here as well. And Josh Hammer is about to go through a bunch of it with you as well. But let me give you some of it. Here is the ruling. It's a beautiful, beautiful ruling. It's the greatest ruling. It's the most spectacular ruling you'll ever see in your life. Here is a couple of excerpts I wanted to kind of highlight here. And first of all, I want to talk about the failing of the idea of Roe versus Wade. Roe versus Wade was this bizarre thing. It was basically legislation. It was the court saying, a lot of people disagree on this and we're not sure exactly what to do. So what if we carve out our own idea of what will make everybody happy? And we know, obviously, by now that did not work, and Alito pointed that out. Neither decision, meaning Roe and Casey, has ended debate over the issue of a constitutional right to obtain an abortion. Indeed, in this case, 26 states expressly ask us to overrule Roe and Casey and to return the issue of abortion to the people and their elected representatives. This court's inability to end debate on the issue should not have been surprising. This court cannot bring about the permanent resolution of a rancorous national controversy simply by dictating a settlement and telling the people to move on. Yeah, it's exactly right. There was never hope for a solution like this. And in fact, it's made it worse. Some people argue on the left, we don't like Roe versus Wade. One of the reasons was because a third of the states were moving towards liberalizing their abortion laws. And then we cut off that process. It's actually talked about by Alito in the ruling as well. In some ways, you could have argued that doing it by legislation, it may have actually happened. I would have fought against it. You probably would have fought against it. But it may have happened another way. Artificially pushing it through the courts is not the way to do these things. We do not pretend, this is really important, by the way, and this is maybe the most important paragraph in this entire thing, because yes, abortion in Roe versus Wade being overturned, abortion can be sent back to the states, all that's vitally important, but just from the function of the court itself, this paragraph is crucial. We do not pretend to know how our political system or society will respond to today's decision overruling Roe and Casey. And even if we could foresee what will happen. We would have no authority to let that knowledge influence our decision. Amen. We can only do our job, which is to interpret the law, apply long-standing principles of stare decisis, and decide this case accordingly. The Supreme Court's job is not to decide whether a law or a rule or a constitutional principle will make everybody happy or not, whether people will protest it or not, whether it will be a good thing or not. That was a lot of the focus we talked about yesterday on the Second Amendment case. Breyer made this big show of all these terrible gun crimes that have happened and all these gun statistics, and Alito just lit him up and said, hey, what does this have to do with anything? It's not our job to sit here and talk about the effects on the country. It is our job to say what the law says, what the Constitution says, what is allowed, what is constrained by our role in this process. We have a system of government, and it's important to stick by it. We therefore hold that the Constitution does not confer a right to abortion. Thank God I can read that sentence. Roe and Casey must be overruled, and the authority to regulate abortion must be returned to the people and their elected representatives. The correct way to look at this ruling is not that it's some extremist decision for the pro-life cause. It has essentially moved this entire issue back to the middle ground, where people can decide. It's like gambling, right? States can decide what they want to do with it. That is not the way I think this should end. I don't think it should be allowed. You should not be allowed to end children's lives. That I feel like we should be able to unite on, and we're not there yet. But I do really believe that we will be one day. This is just the first step in that process, and I hope we get there sooner rather than later. This is a great day for conservatism, for the Constitution, for all the people who fought and stood outside of abortion clinics for hours and hours and hours. And many of those hours must have been hopeless. But we show today that hope is alive. And hopefully, many millions of children will follow.
If you enjoyed this video, hit like and subscribe to our channel so you'll be sure to see similar videos from BlazeTV with the added bonus of signaling YouTube that your voice and opinion still matters. And if you're looking for more great conservative content, check out one of the 2 videos suggested here. And let's go.